Okay, we are recording.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Besides some technical difficulties, we're all here. It's March 9th at 10:15, and I recognize a quorum. So I will go ahead and call to order. We'll start with introductions first. My name is Christina Ballou. I am the chair of the Las Cruces City Art Board.
I am Susan Frary. I'm co-chair of the City Art Board, and I believe this might be my last official meeting. That's okay. I'll still come when you need me.
Oh, yay.
Oh,
I'm Elisa Grayson, Secretary of City Arts Board.
Hi, I'm Saul Ramirez. I'm just an active member of the City Art Board.
More to come.
I'm Chantal Yazzie Martin, active member of the board.
Hannah Chandler, active member of the board.
is that everyone on the board?
So,
Yeah, okay. I'm Ceci Vasconcelos. I'm the art program coordinator for the City of Las Cruces.
Okay, great. Thanks you guys for all being here. We'll go ahead and move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I hear any edits or revisions for the agenda, or is it approved as presented? Okay, approved as presented by Susan Frary. I see her nodding her head. Do I have that seconded?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Saul Ramirez. Next will be approval of the February 9th, 2021 minutes. Is that accepted as presented?
Yes, it is.
Okay, accepted by Elisa Grayson, and do I have that seconded?
Seconded.
Seconded by Katrina Chandler. Okay, do we have any public input?
There are 2 attendees, but I don't see any raised hands, so I think we're good.
Okay, great, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and move on to Ceci with staff updates.
Okay. Lots has happened in the past month. So first of all, the Animal Service Center Go Bon Project Cafe call. The call for entry went live on March 1st. Press release was sent to the media. I hope you saw that. I hope I forwarded it to you. Sorry if I don't remember. It was added to the hot topics on the city website. And I also added it to our web page, including more information and the timeline and maps of the site, so that that information is there for any artists that are interested, or any of the public that's interested. And then it was posted to the city Facebook page and Instagram site. And it was a post both linking the press release, and then now we're running an ad. And that ad is going to the city and the county, El Paso and New Mexico areas. So hopefully we'll get more regional artists answering that call.
Excellent.
Any questions about that?
how long does that is that call open?
It's open until March 31st, 4
Thank you.
weeks. Any others? Okay. The next topic is the fire station project. April 5th is a deadline for the presentations from the 3 finalists. And I have blocked Thursday, April 8th for the presentations. I'm thinking that right now, I'm thinking that they will happen in the afternoon. And they will be, the selection committee will be in one room. We can do that because restrictions are a little bit more flexible now. I think it's 5 minimum, but the city, if it's an essential type of thing that we're doing, then we're allowed to be a little more flexible with that. And so I've given the artist the option of either traveling here in person to present or to do it virtually. Two of the artists have said that they're willing to travel if all things are safe and good. One artist is leaving it up until it gets closer to the date. So, and then I'm also looking at doing it as a hybrid so that the artists are presenting to the selection committee, but it's also being streamed live on our Facebook page, because by then we hope to have our Facebook page. So hopefully I can work out the logistics of that. Any questions about that?
I'm so excited about the idea of having this artist presentation visible to the public through this technology. Like getting people to actually come to the room and sit through a day of presentations is one thing, but having it playing in your house while you're doing things and you can come back and focus at the exciting parts, I think that would be really fun for me, since that's how I'm going to experience it.
Yeah. If for some reason it doesn't work out and it's not showing on the Facebook page, is there another way that the public can view it?
I'm not sure, to be honest. We could probably post it later, or if it's streaming live on Facebook, it'll stay there, and people can look at it whenever they feel like it. So that's one thing. If there's a way to maybe put it on the YouTube city channel as well, I can look into that.
Okay. Hi, Councilor Flores. Nice to see you.
Bear with me for just a
I'm sorry.
second.
Good morning, Tina, and good morning, everybody. Nice to see all of you.
Good morning.
Okay. Any other questions about the fire station presentations?
No, you've been keeping us in the loop very well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then just an update on press releases, live stream, website, and social media. I sent out a media release for the YCC mural project. It looks like the Las Cruces Bulletin is picking it up, so I'm not sure which issue it'll be in, but look out for that. And I don't know if you all noticed, but I think it was last week's issue had the cab article in it. So I hope you all got a
I
chance to see
forgot
that.
to look. I better go
Yeah.
find a copy.
Yes. And they're my heroes right now. The Las Cruces Bulletin is also doing a piece on the board itself. So not sure exactly when that will run, but be on the lookout for that. And thank you for sending me your bios and your quotes. I'm very impressed to be working with such a board. Let's see, the last board meeting is now posted on CLC TV. Somebody told me the thumbnail is of me and it's not very attractive, so, but no, I'm just teasing. So you can send people to that channel to watch that if you need to. And for the future, we'll be posting them there until, again, we can stream live on our Facebook page, and then they'll be on the Facebook page. Let's see. I have created the Facebook and Instagram accounts. The Facebook page is not published yet. I need to get at least maybe 3 posts to go ahead and make it live. We can keep adding things and then send out some sort of media release, or then start promoting it and start getting people to follow it. So maybe we can talk about getting that committee together and start working on content for that.
Yes.
I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
Very. I can't wait. I want to do it now.
Okay, I'm writing here. Ceci needs content.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. Now there's a reason to start feeding you stuff.
Yes.
So we'll discuss a little bit more. Yeah, we'll discuss a little bit more down in committees and meetings about that role and getting content and who will be helping you out with that.
Okay, excellent. Any questions, other questions about that? Okay, City Hall lobby art, I don't have any new updates. I have contacted Garland to send me the name of the artist so that I can check in with her. I think it's her. And
Yes.
see where that project is at. But we're still
Yeah,
hoping to
actually,
get
do you
that
want-
before or by June. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was actually have questions about that. I do want to get the information on that artist. I was trying to find it and I couldn't really find
Okay,
information on the artist who got selected for that art piece.
okay.
Ceci,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to throw this at you now as a future project that's coming up on you real fast. When that City Hall art piece gets installed, I believe that our mayor could be prevailed upon to put a little of his personal, not his personal cash, his account, his mayoral account. I believe that he would really like to have a reception. He probably even could find us a band. I believe that that City Hall art piece installation reception will be a gala that the mayor would love to help host. And so I think we need to get that info and start working on how we can do that. And I'd even volunteer to help on that one.
Okay.
So,
We, of course, will have to consider what our pandemic restrictions are at that point, but yeah.
Well, okay, so I am sincerely hopeful that by June or July, things will be better. And that's when we're hoping she could do an install. So if we could have opening and the mayor could use this grand opening art reception as part of his opening up to the public again, I think we would get like a triple star win out of that.
Okay.
So, you know, see what the schedules are looking like. You need to talk to the artist first. Clearly, that's way too early to put out the publicity on this. But in order to make something like this happen, it's time to start the planning.
Exactly.
And
Okay.
I know the mayor really likes to hold parties and have those sorts of events. He likes that kind of thing if he's invited. So let's give him that
Great.
chance.
I love it.
Excellent idea. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? No? Okay.
I always have a dress on hand.
What's that?
I always have a few dresses on hand.
Oh.
We're ready.
A
Great.
party dress. We want a party dress for this one.
I don't know that I fit in any of my party dresses.
Well, it might be time for us to splurge. I'm ready to have, I honestly, really, you guys, I truly believe by July, we're going to start being able to do things again. I'm
I
holding
hope so.
the carrot out in front of myself.
I hope so. Okay,
Ceci,
moving on to, I'm sorry.
this is Council. I have a question for Susan, for Ms. Ferrari. So do you mean an evening gala affair?
No, I think that this would probably, he might want to hold it at, 3, 4, 5 p.m. So he could kind of hold it as a after hours or at the end of the day thing. Or like he likes to do things before council meetings, but that wouldn't leave much time. In the past, we've had an unfortunate hobby of having our art openings feature a picture of store-bought lemonade and a package of store-bought cookies on a plastic tray. And we didn't get a real excited reception out of that. So,
No,
but I think
it doesn't sound exciting.
we would talk to the mayor and ask him what he wants. I think this is an opportunity to bring this to him very early in the game and ask him if he would like to help sponsor this and show him the pictures of what it's going to look like and really give him a chance to get excited about how wonderful this is going to be. I see the mayor as a prime push on getting the city art board back on the front page, so to speak, in a
Right.
positive way. And I know that this mayor is particularly fond of more of the bronzes and classical art flavor of art world. And so I want him to I want this art board and this mayor to get friendly with each other, and you guys start educating him on why new contemporary stuff is also good. And the way we do that is get in on his good side first and let him throw a party where he looks good.
Well, I think, Susan, that's a fabulous idea. We also have a discussion later on committees, and one of our committees will be kind of focusing on outreach and public planning and things like that. So I would like to let Ceci continue her updates and we can continue this conversation for that.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Moving on to Munson Senior Center, the signed contracts have been sent to New Mexico Arts. So now they're being routed internally there for the rest of the signatures. Once that's done, I think they'll finally get to the point where they can contact the artist and start transferring the art to us. So hopefully we'll hear more on that for our next meeting, but at least they have the contracts. Any questions on that, the Munson Center?
I don't have a question, but I just noticed that Councilor Flores has her little hand graphic up. I always forget about those. Do you have a question?
Actually, no, I don't. I just wanted to commend Ms. Ferrari for her insight and knowing
Thank
the
you.
mayor very well. Yes.
It's okay. We're moving on.
Okay, public art funding ordinance update. So Rebecca Slaughter and I have been working on this. As you know, we had contacted the legal firm to look at the language and give us their input. And then I contacted Albuquerque's public art manager to kind of run the language by her and get her insight, because their program has been going on for so long and it's very successful. So we wanted to get her insight on just how Albuquerque does things, because they're in New Mexico and have to follow the same laws and processes that we do. So so that was actually very helpful, but it kind of brought it home to us that maybe we're not quite ready for the legal firm to finish reviewing the ordinance. We're nowhere close to being done with the language on that. We're looking at it again. We have a meeting scheduled this afternoon with the assistant city manager and Lynn Gallagher, the director of quality of life, just to kind of get a sense of where our funding can come from and will come from. So we can move forward in that direction. So that's pretty much it on that. I hope to have more next time around. Yes, Miss Susan.
Sorry to keep interrupting. This one is relative to the money. There was originally, we had proposed to have that park impact fee money also included in the ordinance, and we noticed it was out of the last draft. Can you please bring that topic back to the
Sure.
table? That was a significant piece of the funding package. And also, if we're not going to manage it, does that mean Parks is still going to manage the art in the parks process? Because that is directly what that money is for. So that goes back to these two department level people need to figure that out.
Okay,
Okay, so that's my input to you. Thank you.
sure. Any other questions on that or comments? EAM system. We are working internally to create a system. EAM means, I believe, Enterprise Asset Management, and it's tied into our facilities inventory. So this will be a system where we can build up our public art inventory, and we can categorize it by all sorts of different things, so that when it comes time to reporting, we can have them almost instantly. You know, we can search our database for whatever criteria we're looking for and have that report ready to go. So we're really excited about this. It's still in the planning stages, but I just wanted to bring it up to you as something that we are working on, because that's definitely one of our main priorities, is to have a full inventory of all the public art that the city owns.
That's exciting. Look forward to that.
Yes. Can't wait for that to be done, but it's going to take a while. Let's see, public art mosaic. Oh, anyone else have any questions about?
Counselor Flores?
You're muted. Oh, there you
Thank
go.
you, Ceci. Yes, it's easier to just wave my hand. On the full inventory of all public art that the city owns, so you haven't, no one has really started that yet? I know that this has been a brouhaha, for quite some time now.
Mhm.
I mean,
As far
so
as
what-
I know,
how are
there
you going to?
no, I'm
it all
sorry, go
down?
ahead.
I'm sorry. I keep, how are you going to track it all down? I've heard that there's city art that is all over the place, and I don't know how it went so unmanaged. So how is it going to be corralled, for lack of a better?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. We're going to have to look at records. We're going to have to look at contracts. We're going to, the art that we're aware of, that's either in locations that we know of or in that public or that, what is it called? Virtual tour, city art tour that we have. We can possibly go look at the plaques that are on these pieces so that can give us an indication of when they were acquired and who the artist is. But I have a feeling that a lot of them aren't marked that way. So it's going to come down to checking contracts, checking city records, checking any kind of acquisitions that were made and putting it together that way. It's going to be drawing from a lot of different places, and that's the biggest challenge.
Ceci, would it help to maybe put out I was going to say a call, but that has a different connotation in this committee's or this board's context, but to reach out, by way of the bulletin or Sun News or whatever, KTEL, KRWG, asking people about that, just do you have any knowledge of, that sort of stuff, just putting the word out, asking for information, if they have any information regarding that. I think that might be a way to, I don't know.
That might be a possibility. I'd like to look to see what we actually have records of and what we can gather. Put together that base list first and then see where we still have holes or maybe we're missing something, and then put the word out for those. But that's a good idea. Get the community involved.
Yeah, so actually we've already started various parts of like identifying what the city art, what is under the city arts property and stuff. I think I've already been talking to people in the community about beginning surveys, various types of surveys and various types of projects in which we could actually create a more reliable list of artworks that we have. But most of the work that still needs to get done is really just defining methodologies and defining the language of what is public art and what art is private property, because there's actually a very thin line between those two, and including in the master plan.
Thank you, Saul. I believe Susan also had a question or a comment.
Bessie covered it. I agree that you probably need to build the database as best you can and fill in the information we have before we start doing a call to the community to bring us information. I think we could get overwhelmed way too early, and Ceci is only herself so far. And even though we'll get to this again in committees, never mind, later. Later.
Yeah, in the presentation later that I will be giving, I will be discussing more clearly some suggestions as to how we can begin these sort of surveys. It's definitely going to be very complicated, mostly multidisciplinary. We're not going to be, I think reaching out to the community is going to be a very key part of building these surveys. And I think it should be definitely at the beginning and throughout the entire process.
asking for feedback is a very important tool to use when serving the community. So measurability would be great for sure. Thanks, Solo.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. All right, and now I'll move on to public art mosaic damage repair. I don't know how much information you all know about La Placita and the mosaic art that's there. It was damaged in late December by a water main break, and the water seeped underneath the mosaic and started pushing it up. And of course, the utilities crew had to get in to repair the water mains. So they did their very best to keep it intact and cut a slab of the mosaic out and pushed it over to repair the line. So now we need to figure out how to repair that or restore it. And we had a meeting with staff and the artist. I think it was last Friday or the week before. And to talk about what the next steps might be. We are trying to determine if we can use the same slab within the sidewalk repair. And if we can't do that, then have the artist decide if he can use the piece that's existing and recreate it somehow to fit into the rest of the mosaic. So we are working on it. If you get any, if the public talks to you about this or wants to know what's going on, it's a very delicate process. It takes time. I mean, you can imagine putting a mosaic together, just an original, takes a lot of time. So having to restore it or rebuild it is just as hard. But we are trying to do it as quickly as possible. And, we have to take into consideration the safety of the public downtown because it is a walking area. So right now it's barricaded, and we will figure out how to make that safer and, be able to maintain the safety of the area while it's being worked on. So I'll keep you up to date on that process. Any questions, Counselor?
Yes. So Ceci, I have received emails on this from residents, especially residents in the Mesquite district who take walks and they're very upset. So how long does it take the city to fix something like that?
Yeah.
Would it be okay to just forward that to you with a request to?
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
hesitate sometimes. I usually just direct it to, I would CC Lynn,
Of course.
That's the protocol we have to take, and the city manager as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or Ikani probably in this case.
Right.
Is now designated to oversee this board, or, yeah. So, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank
And I see that Mr. Ikani joined us, so
you.
welcome.
Hello, everyone. Just wanted to say hello. That's all.
Good
Hello.
morning, Connie.
Any other questions about that? Yeah, if you get any emails or phone calls, yeah, feel free to forward those on to me and I'll take care of answering their questions.
Thank you, Ceci.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
So
think that's it.
awesome. Thank you, Ceci, for your updates. So we'll go ahead, we'll move on to discussion action from the City Art Board. First off, I kind of wanted to just remind you guys again that we do have some openings, positions available for the City Art Board. Please tell your friends, direct them to the application, and let's get as many people as we can to apply for some of these positions. And then this is going to be Susan's last meeting with us. Is that correct?
That I looked up on the city website and that's what it says. It says I'm good through the end of March and I don't think you're planning any more meetings. I guess I could meet with your executive board one more time, but officially I'm no longer a member now. So after today, and you know, I got really emotional and a little bit sad, but I'm also feeling a lot of relief. I think that the current team is exactly the group I would have picked if you would have let me go out and pick people. Our earlier group was a little stodgier. They were a little more dedicated to the classical arts, the bronzes and the more grand presentations. And I really like this group's community spirit and wanting to get community art happening. So I'm excited for it. Yes.
Thank you, Susan. We really, really appreciate your time, and yeah, it's sad to hear you've helped and guided us in so many ways. So, but I mean, this isn't going to be the last that we're going to see you. I'm sure of it. So,
Madam Chair,
yes, Councilor Flores.
gracias. So is Susan, she isn't barred or prohibited from sitting in on meetings, is she? I mean, she wouldn't be a voting member and she wouldn't have to be on a committee, but we
I
could
also
still
wouldn't be
hear.
able to talk. The problem
Yes,
is
well, I'm just, I don't know what the, what the rules of procedure are in this sort of a situation. I mean, the public's always invited to, we have to comply with the OMA, so everything is out there in the public. I don't know, maybe you can.
Let me address that because I was the one who helped write it into the bylaws. There was a very specific reason why we said that a person could only serve a maximum of 2 terms.
Yeah.
And it is because there are other groups and committees that the city has going on where certain individuals have been on that group for 25 years. And they keep, every time they leave, then they get called back and they jerk the whole group right back into going the direction that they want that group to go.
Mhm.
And so we felt like it was really important to not, I'm a very strong voice in this group right now, and it's important that that strong voice go away so other voices can become strong.
Mhm.
And so, yes, even though I'm going to miss this terribly, I also understand that this is the way it's supposed to mature. And I'm really pleased that it's moving forward. So yes, it's okay. And I can still sit in on meetings. I can attend as a member of the public, but I would very seldom speak up. You wouldn't be having my voice like you do. I'm more likely to have it, if we get it set up so it plays live like the city council meetings do, I'm more likely to have it going in the background while I'm doing something, and then I would send a comment or an email in later.
Mhm.
That's probably how I'm likely to address this.
Okay, yeah, I was just, because I think that you'd be a member of the public now, you wouldn't be a member of the board. But I think every voice is important. I think that everybody's valued the fact that you brought the historical perspective to the board in terms of where it's gone. And I agree with you in terms of having new voices, new perspectives, and it is moving in a wonderful way. And I agree for the short time I've been, I guess it's going on 3 years now, maybe 4, being on, it just goes by so fast. It's really moved in a wonderful direction, and our new board is dynamite. And I don't mean to sound like an ageist because I'm a member of that group, but it's just so wonderful to have these young people on the board and to have so much vision and actually, very wise people and hard workers. So, but thank you on behalf of the city for all your contributions, Susan. And I hope we keep in touch.
Oh yeah, we will.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Elisa?
I was going to say something that we use in other board meetings outside of this one, and Ceci, all ears. Flash dance, sorry, I'm all theatrical today. What was it? Dancer arrived. What was it? Sometimes we have, like, for our parents specifically, like we integrate where we have like a question, like a Q&A where they type it in, So I didn't know if maybe that was possible. That way Susan can type it. on our iPad and stuff, and others can type it on their iPad. Like a weenie. I feel like a weenie, like I'm giving excuses, like trying to make it work.
I think, yes, whatever capacity, Susan, you know, as a public member after this meeting, we would love to have you. And I'm sure I'm going to be texting you with a lot of questions for a while. And I guess also with that said, that means that next month we might want to consider nominations again to replace Susan as co-chair, or you know, moving things around. So again, if you guys want to nominate somebody else, or if you want to nominate yourself, please send me an email and be prepared for that for our next meeting. Okay, so then we'll go ahead and move on to committees. So in our shared Google Drive, we do have a spreadsheet that I believe is called Public Art Committees. That is a document that has basically who is on what committee, but we're also trying to set up and organize subcommittees in regards to the City Art Board. So based off of Elisa's presentation last month, we have a couple of subcommittees that we just kind of wanted to hash out with you guys and explain what the role would be, and to also assign a couple of members to these subcommittees. I also wanted to clarify that I think for each subcommittee that we have, we're going to assign a lead to help facilitate meetings, to keep communication going so the ball doesn't get dropped, and that way you are prepared with information by our next board meeting. Also, with some projects, like for the rotating art project, I think one thing that might be challenging is getting some of these projects off the ground. And then once it becomes something that we actually vote on, and it's actually a project for Ceci, then she would then kind of carry out the baton. But before that happens, we need someone to help facilitate those meetings to get the groundwork going before the baton is passed on to Ceci. So for example, the rotating art project is still kind of in a pre-production stage, and something considered. So we'll have a lead for that, and you'll kind of get everything going. And then once it's ready and we vote, then Ceci will then take it on as something we put into production. So we'll kind of go down the subcommittees that we've created. And Elisa, feel free to jump in and explain anything, or if I'm missing anything, go ahead. So the first committee that we have is our communications committee. Right now, I have Chantel and Katrina on that committee. I believe that you two are interested in this. This is basically helping promote the City Art Board. Some of those tasks might include creating content, finding content, taking photos, things like that, and then putting that content into our shared drive folder, which I believe is called social media. And that way Ceci can just grab some of the things that you make, some of the things that the photos that you take, and put it onto social media as she needs. How do you guys, what are your thoughts on that? I guess okay, Chantal.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that sounds like something I could do, and I'm still interested in. It's just something that we have to learn the formalities and what we can and can't post in Ceci, and just with some of the guidelines we can read. So yeah, I'm still interested in the communications committee.
Yeah, I also, when you guys were initially talking about it, I thought that was something that seemed like doable. Also, like in the purview of something that I feel like I've already done before. Also, I was kind of curious because the way you're talking about it, I think that seems like really manageable to be able to continue to put something in like a shared drive, and then it's just like a well that she can draw from. However, I did wonder if there were some sort of like parameters in like this week we're specifically wanting to promote this, or if there's like guidelines on like, hey, can you do something about this, instead of just it being so free form, if there was some sort of like something like telling us some sort of structure that's saying like, hey, we kind of need this like right now, and this is what we're promoting, or this is what we're looking for. And then there could still be that free form structure where if we're out, or if we decide like I just get like a wild hair and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go take beautiful photos of this thing, like, and then just kind of put them in Drive, like, but having those two things together. So I was kind of wondering how that structure would work.
I think that that's an excellent question. And I think that that would be something that you and Chantel could help develop. You know, maybe my suggestions are to have kind of a monthly check-in with each other with Ceci, just see what needs to be focused on, and anticipate and plan for future things that we need to promote for. But yeah, some of these things could be kind of passive. Okay, nice photo, nice graphic, communication, but some things might need to be a little bit more planned out if we are doing an event or something like that.
Okay, that makes sense. That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. And then I also wanted to say that even though Katrina and Chantel are in the communications committee, this shared drive is for everybody. So if inspiration strikes anybody and you find a moment for content, please do that and go ahead and put that into that shared drive. Elisa?
I was gonna just offer just my availability here. My niche specifically with everything else in this world is also organizational management. So I'm really good with helping new teams build up from the bottom up, kind of grassroots beginning. So if you guys are open to it, I'm always open to leading that help. I like to be there once, no more than twice, and then back away. I'm just here just to do the organizational management part and honestly just be a source of inspiration. So use me if need be. Because a lot of questions I could get through with you.
Thank you. And I think to also touch on that, I would like to assign a lead for the communications committee. And if Katrina is open to it, I would like to assign you to be the lead for the communications committee.
Okay, yeah, I am open.
Okay, great. And again, use Elisa as a resource if you need.
Yeah, for sure.
And same thing, I'm available for questions for meetings if you guys need, and Ceci as well. Ceci, you had a question?
Yeah, I uploaded the city's guidelines and I forget what else to the Google Drive. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was able to access those documents.
I have not seen that, but I'll check and see if I have access to that.
Because maybe I didn't share it correctly, but.
Susan Ferry?
So briefly on the general topic of committees, before we get into who's on which committee and which committees are doing what, the structure of how committees works, let's briefly review. According to the city's rules and our bylaws, the chair is always a member of the committee, is always informed when the committee is meeting, is always told afterwards what happened at a meeting if they weren't able to attend. And so no committees are out there free rolling. All committees keep Tina in your loop. And also I think that what would probably be a good idea before committees start rolling out into the community, asking a lot of questions and promising or being too active, it's a good idea that the committee comes to this group and says, this is the job we're going to do. This is what we plan to do next month. And then come back and report rather than forming themselves up into a committee and going out and actively doing too much that hasn't even gone past the board to see if that's the direction we're going. And so I don't want to step on anyone's energy and excitement about working, but you've got to remember we are only advisory and we are a city government agency. Sorry. Okay.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you, Susan. I love how you always, you know, kind of remind us of these things, which yes, exactly. So I think preparation and planning for the next board meeting, present that information and kind of work with each meeting as like a benchmark is kind of what I would imagine. And again, yes, I am available. I didn't realize that I had never been included in committee information or communication before. So yes, please include me. That would be great. And then Elisa, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I was gonna say, to add to what Susan was saying, the first thing I did, like when I was talking with Saul, and this is just in case you guys don't meet with me, but think of it from when you start a new job or you go to a job interview. And a lot of times they ask you for a 30, 60, 90 plan. And so look at it from that angle. That way, again, like you're not super excited and jumping into things. And as Susan said already, right, getting out there in the community, but kind of create a 30, 60, 90 plan that way. And I think that'd be great for each committee to do. That way that can be brought forward. It's kind of like not cemented, but it's something that is written and that it can sort of like flow with communication as far as, hey, this is our mission, this is our goals, this is what we plan on working on. So everybody's in the loop.
Yes, and I think reminding ourselves that this is a part of the puzzle piece of the big picture. So each subcommittee links up with other committees in some shape, way, or form. So that connection is vital. Okay, so we have for our communications committee, Chantel and Katrina will be the lead on that. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to the rotating art project. So this is one of those that is kind of in the pre-production stage. And once we actually have more information to put it to a vote, then Ceci will kind of take that baton. So right now I have Chantel and Saul, and then I was going to have Chantel be the lead for that right now. Is that okay with you, Chantel?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay, great. And then we'll move on to market and research. Right now, that is Elise and Saul. I was hoping to have Saul be the lead on that. Does that sound okay to you, Saul?
Yes, that would be okay.
Okay, great. Now, the next committee or subcommittee that we have is program development. We haven't assigned people on this one just yet. So this would be kind of the outreach education. This kind of brings in what Susan was discussing earlier about having an event for the lobby piece. Elisa also had an idea of us maybe doing quarterly farmers market outreach things. So this subcommittee would need to help kind of organize these things and keep these things going. So I guess I just want to see if anybody has any thoughts or, you know, would be interested in being on that committee.
So, so you're saying that this is a subcommittee that you're talking about on, under what committee would this be? Subcommittee under what?
So this would be program development.
Program.
Yeah, so some of the things that we would basically have would be outreach, education, reaching out to the public. And again, maybe some of those events or workshops or things that we would hope to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how different would that be from things that are happening in the market and research section? Essentially, like at what level are those two different?
Yeah, we can have that conversation. For me, this would be more of linking up with the public and putting out who the Public Arts Board is, and also being a resource for artists. Elisa, do you have thoughts on that?
So, well, can you repeat your question just so I'm not repetitive?
Oh yeah, like how is this committee different from the things being done with the research committee, or even actually the communications committee, who's also doing sort of an outreach at a certain level? I guess, like, yeah, what would be the different responsibilities?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the last thing that we want to do is have each committee be performing as if it's a full-time job. So there has to be some sort of intersection here at each one. So for example, like with marketing and research, right? And you're looking at doing surveys and surveying a specific neighborhood before a specific artwork goes up. Then you're gonna go ahead and connect with communications. That's kind of gonna get something and make some type of post about being out there. Then from program development, they may actually set up the phase for you to make it a little bit easier for you by maybe getting out there. There's an event or a fair going on in that zip code where they're getting out there and they're saying, hey, they're also going to drop off by your doors. So it's just a way of having like a clear direction of like pluralism. That way there is that interconnectedness of each committee, but at the same time, not so each committee feels like they're doing the full circle, but that we are actually having and counter-dependent on each other. So
Perfect, thanks.
Susan Ferry?
So I don't know where it falls under. I guess I thought market and research had more to do with who is the one that's going to be watching the national scene, and what are the new up and coming art forms, and what's happening in New Orleans that we might want to duplicate. What
Marketing
committee
and
would that
research
fall
development.
under?
Marketing and research development.
Okay,
They,
that's where I saw that falling also. I just wanted to verify that I was reading what you were saying.
You know what, and if I may, I think while we were kind of planning these subcommittees, we played with the actual name for the final committee, which is program development being public outreach. Would that kind of help clarify maybe what that role is for everybody?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So we'll go ahead and make that one public outreach. Okay. Do we have any volunteers for this one? We could also wait until we get other art board members as well. And if we need to switch things out as we continue, we could do that.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't mind being part of also the public outreach committee. I think because it'd be similar to the market and research committee. I would like, of course, not head. I wouldn't want to be the head of two committees, or, you know, without other people already getting the opportunity as well, especially. But yeah, I don't know how. Yeah.
Okay. I think that makes sense. I think right now, as I can see, Chantel is on two committees, Saul is on two committees, Elisa is on one, but she's also the secretary. Katrina is on one. So maybe Katrina, if that was something you're interested in, and then we could also see what the other art board members would be. And then of course, that person would be the lead, because Saul is also the lead on market and research. So I don't want him to be the lead on two projects.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that I thought the public outreach seemed like a good committee, something that I would be interested in doing for sure.
Okay.
I'd love to work with you, Katrina.
So let's go ahead and do this. Let's have Saul and Katrina on this for now. Saul, just because I don't want to overload you with too many subcommittees, we might switch you out with somebody else when we get somebody else in. Does that work? Okay, great. Okay, awesome. So we have everybody assigned. We don't have a lead for the public outreach right now, but we'll figure that out as things kind of progress. Another thing, there's not much for us to really discuss in this sense, but just so it's kind of on your radar, is that we're also going to have you guys try to be a liaison for a partner or an art partner within our community. So I believe that we have Katrina being a sort of a very light liaison for Film Las Cruces. And we hope to expand on that with other organizations that we could potentially partner with. So very, very light role. I don't expect too much communication, but just in case if something pops up and we need to work with this organization, maybe one of you guys would help facilitate that. Susan Frary?
Let me give you guys a little example of agencies to liaison with, so you can all start thinking about which one you fit in with. We've got the Doña Ana Arts Council, and even though Greg Smith may come to us as their liaison from them, it doesn't mean we shouldn't have a liaison to them. So Arts Council is definitely one. I think we should probably have someone liaise with the NMSU Art Department and check in with them on a fairly regular basis. You've got several local art groups that would be art forums, the Arts Association, the Potters Guild, the Weaving. I mean, there's a whole series of art groups, the watercolors. And I think that it would be really nice to get a list of all of them and see if we've got people who are members of that. It'd be nice to be getting regular information back and forth. Rebecca took care of most of that because she had contacts with all of those groups. And she email blasted every month different things out to them. So that's part of that communications at the city artist level. And so start thinking about that, and also start thinking about groups. Someone needs to be our New Mexico arts person that reads all their emails and checks through all their stuff that comes out. Ceci can do all of this and do it well. And so if we want it done well, there has to be some help. if it doesn't get done by anyone but Ceci, it'll still be a working program. It'll be a good program. It just won't be as good as it could be. So build.
Great, thank you, Susan. So we'll develop that list of people that we would like to keep in contact with. And again, you know, signing up for their newsletters, keeping your ears and eyes open for things that they're doing, and also an introduction of who we are, and sharing our information with them as well is kind of what we're hoping to do. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments on just committees in general?
I think Elisa had something to say, no?
Yeah, but I was thinking it maybe would have been too much because when I was looking back at the presentation, I put contact agency underneath communications. That way they would be able to kind of build that list of people that we need to keep in contact with. And then they would have the power to, well, not the power, but they would have the ability to be like, hey, who should be the contact, or talk with everyone and be like, hey, I have a list here, sign up for maybe who you'd be best at forming and building, sustaining that relationship with.
Sounds good to me. That might fit.
Yeah, I also, in my presentation, I will talk a little bit about the idea of like creating lists of various types of community leaders that we actually have in town. There's a thing called power mapping, where you can actually look into like various networks and map exactly how a lot of different organizations, communities, and even individuals are involved in these sort of spaces. It might be a great idea to start thinking about building something like that, or looking into something like power mapping.
Okay, great. I look forward to seeing more about that in your presentation. Okay, so we can get to that presentation. We'll go ahead and move on to Klein Park updates. Did you guys get a chance to meet since last meeting by any chance? No? Okay, so I don't think that there will be any updates for this today, but again, with this new information of committees and leads, we have, that's actually kind of something I want to discuss with Susan. So right now, Susan, you were on that committee, but we also have Katrina and Chantel for whenever you do leave. So what would your role be afterwards once you leave?
You know, I don't know that we have a maximum size for committees. I don't remember that being specified anywhere. And I don't see any reason why I can't just be a community member at large. We have several artists who live over in that area, and they may not want to be on the selection committee because they may want to apply. So I could be under community artist, or I can just be under community member. I'm not sure how strict the city is about our titles under this process. But yes, I will stay on the committee, and I'll be more than happy to continue to participate on that.
Okay.
And officially, you need to have a lead person from within the art board who would serve as chair, but I'm not sure the city requires that. That was one of the questions I had that Ceci can check on. Is it possible that a committee has a chair that is not a city art board member? So, you know, I don't know that I necessarily even volunteering to be that chair. I'm just thinking it's a technical question we should address.
Okay.
Also,
So,
I was wondering,
oh, go ahead, Saul.
I was actually wondering if I could also get in on that committee. I just want to be a part of like in it, not to like overload us work. I just want to be you know, just in the loop with that committee as well for the Klein Park.
Okay. I think we're not the selection committee yet. Just to make this easier for everyone, I don't think we're the selection committee yet. We're the pre-selection committee that's helping develop the community bonding part of this. And so, Tina, that'll probably make it easier for you. We're not actually an art selection committee yet.
Right. So this would be kind of that pre-stage of just keeping the ball rolling until it turns into something that we vote on, then it is a selection committee. But yeah, Saul, if you would like to help, you know, set the groundwork within that project as well, I think that would be fine if the three of you guys want to do that. So Susan, I guess my question is, I kind of look to you as a lead in regards to that project, but now that you are no longer an art board member, we still need to keep the ball rolling internally for ourselves. Would we have a community member be a lead on that project if that's something you still want to do, or should we assign a lead within our own board?
I am willing to do it at least for the next 3 to 4 months. I can be the lead on that and be your point of contact for everybody. And then, yes, when we're ready to hand it over to an actual art selection committee process, then I would probably not be on that art selection committee because I helped develop the rules for it. It's not good to have the same people writing the rules that are then enforcing the rules.
Right. Okay, great. So we'll have Susan continue being the lead for that project. And so Susan, if you could help facilitate just communications, meetings. I believe that we wanted to reach out to Sonia and then possibly go and look at the location again. So all that fun stuff. It seems like that you're probably having to start all over again compared to where you were like a year and a half ago at this project. But yes, if you can continue facilitating that, we would appreciate that.
No problem. And you know, we say we're starting over again, but we're at a higher level on the spiral. We're covering the same territory, but at a much higher, better level, I think. So I feel good about stepping back and doing it slowly and well. Not real slow, but well.
Yes, this is true. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the rotating art project. Did you guys have a chance to meet to discuss that? I believe that was Saul and Chantel. No, okay. So no updates for that this time. But again, next week or next meeting, Chantel, you would help kind of lead that conversation and set up a meeting with Saul and keep me included in that as well. And then we'll have an update for our next meeting.
Yeah, I think that was part of the issue was we weren't sure where to go after that. So now we can have some direction. And then it's good that Saul and Elisa are doing that survey piece so we can figure out like where I think we were talking about the most visited bus stops are, and then just different things that they would want to see on a bus stop. So that'll be cool to collaborate with Saul and Elisa, and we'll be in a committee again to figure out what the next steps are.
Excellent, perfect. Okay. So without further ado, that leads us to the Histories and Economic Development presentation, and that is presented by Saul.
Okay, Doc, let me try to share my screen here real quick. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen?
Oops. There we go. Yes. Nice and big.
Okay. So I've been working on this research for the last couple months, really, because I've been, ever since we started the committee for the bus plan, I sort of started deciding like what are going to be the sort of methodologies that we're going to do when we're making these next couple of decisions. And various conversations that I've had both with members of the art board and members of the community, I've been seeing that there's just various things that we have to, I guess, address when talking about what kind of art we want to be seeing in the city, as well as what are the kind of decisions that we're going to be making when it comes to, or how we're going to be making these kinds of decisions. Let me just kind of move it here. So I've been going over the the public art master plan, and I really became kind of difficult to really define what public art really is when we're talking about it. We do use language like that it's a mechanism, specifically the master plan, right? That for a growing art community. On the interview that Ceci had at Café con Leche, it is mentioned that it is any artwork on city property. But the master plan actually does include a public art and private development section. And I think there's like an ambiguity there that needs to be, that's sort of still unclarified. We still not entirely sure what properties are actually public and what properties are actually considered fully private. And in the presentation that I sent you guys, in which Norma, who is the curator, one of our curators at our gallery, she also talked about the sort of ambiguity when it comes to the murals. She decides to define, which I will have it on another slide. She defines it as any mural in the public right of way. And that is basically all of the what is public art, at least, or a public mural in her project of Murals of Las Cruces. But here are some common themes as well that are sort of like covered in the master plan throughout, which is often having to do with the community, with improving quality of life. So we're very invested with, of course, with quality of life department. And there's often very much a lot of language about improving the city's investments. Let's see. So right here's a little quote that I found that I really liked in the public art master plan that really I think is very, and it's only on one section on one section of the master plan, but it sort of addresses just how we are engaged with the public. And I think it really sort of emphasizes how important it is for us, at least us, as sort of a middle ground between our community and our city government. And right here is Norma's definition, and I just sort of switched it a little to match our language instead. She says that her definition is for murals, but here I'm specifically talking about public art. And that is really just a suggestion as to how we could improve the language. There's still a lot of things I think that aren't clear about how we're going to make those decisions, but in the master plan, we have right here some of our visions and goals, which include improving the visual identity of our public spaces, as well as creating opportunities. We have on our goals, I actually have a lot of problems with. I think they're actually very vague and they don't actually, define what our objectives are as an art board or as a public arts advisory board. And I will actually address a little further why those are vague and difficult. So one of the biggest issues that I've been dealing with as I've been doing my research and my studies is the question of gentrification. I think when it comes to New Mexico, Las Cruces is in a very unique position. We are not necessarily a gentrified space, but we are definitely in the midst of it. We've seen a lot of public art and a lot of various historical districts be remodeled over the last couple of years, not necessarily always for the best. There's been various artworks and things that we actually have in the city, in our public art that is actually, you could say, the inaccurate even about how it tells our histories and the way that it actually represents the community. And so right here, there's actually a study that was published in Santa Fe in 2015 about the risk of displacement and the way that gentrification affects the community. And this quote right here, really important because it highlights the way that population shifts have a lot to do with it. And when I'm going over our the public art master plan, a lot of our language has to do with how we're trying to bring in both tourism and populations of retirees, which we're very interested in sort of bringing in that kind of capital. But there is actually no consideration in various aspects of the master plan as to how our community is supposed to benefit from all those incoming populations. And so right here, we actually have an important little section where they talk about the importance of infrastructure, transit, and affordable housing, and how these are significant things in the way that the population is going to grow. And so in our community, since COVID started, we've already seen an increase in housing prices, as well as an increase in homelessness rates, even here in our city. And those are actually quite visible, even just like while I'm at work at Milagro, I actually see the various numbers of homeless people that has increased, that they actually come and hang out at our shop. And so some important language to be thinking about when talking about gentrification is also right here is, let me see, the process of a dispossession. which has a lot to do with property and the way that on the day-to-day life of most cities, right, we actually define people's rights and we sort of protect people's rights depending on how much property they have. And so oftentimes this possession is a very important civic issue in many societies that are growing, especially cities like that are urbanizing quickly. Santa Fe has actually seen some of the biggest impacts, and I'm actually going to go over a few of them right here in a bit. But I think it's important to talk about here Judith Butler, who is a very important theorist over the last 50 years, who talks a lot about art and politics and the sort of relationship between that and civics and sort of a citizenship. So yeah, property relations have come to structure and control moral concepts of personhood, self-belonging, agency, and self-identity. And I think these are important issues to consider when we're talking about what kind of choices the art board makes when putting art in public spaces. There's actually been a long history of development disparity all over various aspects of the Southwest, actually over the last 100, 200 years. And it is really because Las Cruces, along with the rest of New Mexico, has actually been defined by a history of colonization. And so we have to actually really consider what we're talking about when we're saying development. Now, right here is a quote from a wonderful book by Rosalind Deutsch called Evictions, Art and Spatial Politics. And so she says that, she talked about this Paul Goldberger, who was a critic in New York who championed in the 80s the production of the architecture that we actually have grown to know so well. And so she actually explores the very problematic development connections between how the city of New York was urbanized and how various social problems actually started coming up, including the rise of violence and poverty. And his ideology of city development is one that's actually still very common today, and it's actually gone quite global and has affected the economies of various places, including, like, Santa Fe will be an example here, but including Spain, whose housing market has essentially been warped by the ideas that architecture is not a public issue. It's not an issue of public or civic rights. Let me see. Yes, so like we're talking a lot about the economic disparity that is actually involved when we're talking about building our cities and developing our cities and discussing what we want that to look like. So I was reading some histories about New Mexico specifically, and about how the New Mexico government was actually developed and sort of instated over the last couple hundred years. And I think it's we here in our community don't tend to really talk about these things. We don't really tend to consider the sort of shape and structure of our institutions and who they were actually built to help. And so, you know, I've been learning that New Mexico for the last 100 years has actually been has had a really complicated relationship, both with the United States and with Mexico, as well as here in Mesilla Valley, where it used to be a place that people had to cross, and they'd cross from Las Cruces to Mesilla if you didn't want to be an American citizen. And that was before the Gadsden Purchase. So after Gadsden came in and actually bought Mesilla Valley because he wanted to put railroad tracks in here through Texas, there was actually a large number of immigration that was coming in from the south and from the east. So a lot of that actually came with a long history of actual violence that is involved in colonization, and it is a history that we usually don't talk about because there's actually not much of an incentive to discuss that kind of inequity. So I was reading a book on economic development by Michael P. Todaro and Stephen C. Smith right here, in which they discuss the impact that histories of colonization have on the development of certain nations and communities. And what he says is striking, because he says that colonists would have had little incentive to uphold property rights or to encourage the investments or allow broad access to economic opportunities or political participation to the places and to the people of the places they colonized. And so when they usually arrive into a place and impose their various sort of government structures onto these various different native lands, the impacts that they have are actually long lasting. And a lot of the indigenous communities and native communities that were there before the colonists rarely or never really got the chance to both adapt to the new government or even had the desire to. And so we actually see to this day that there's actually a hostility against people who don't understand bureaucratic processes or who can't actually move through these sort of civic bureaucracies, right? And so there's actually a sociologist from UNM who also explores the way that in New Mexico, after the railroads came, that there was actually a very strong, violent overtaking of the government that actually was an active move to displace Mexican and indigenous people from participating in politics. And it had a really strong effect into how the New Mexican identity between Hispanics, Mexicans, and various other sort of Nuevo Mexicanos sort of developed, right? And there's actually quite a interesting, you could say, ethnic and racial disparity there as well. But at the end of the day, right, New Mexico, and he addresses this too in his essays, that New Mexico has very unique history of the community remaining involved and of there being a strength of the indigenous people who here have not really been displaced from their homeland. The Pueblo people are still in their ancestral land, and that's actually very unique to our state. Not a lot of other indigenous people all over the United States have that privilege to still be in their indigenous land, and for us to have access to talk to them and to be able to actually be in communication with the various non-displaced indigenous people who we've really just displaced politically here. So sorry for all the quotes, but talking about sustainable integration, Irene Gomez Franco actually explores the importance of economic growth and development, and the way that those things are not always about, don't always focus on who receives those benefits, I guess. So it's not always, it's very, the economy has a very specific idea about who benefits from certain projects, and it is often based on who invests and on who has the property and who actually owns, who participates essentially is a big question. Who are we talking about when we're talking about economic development? In that book of development economics, Michael Todaro and Stephen Smith say that in addition to being concerned with efficient allocation of existing scarce or idle productive resources and their sustained growth over time, that development economics should also deal with the economic, social, political, and institutional mechanisms, both public and private, necessary to bring rapid, at least by historical standards, and large-scale improvements in levels of living. So what they're saying there is that, and it's actually repeated throughout the book, is that we need to redefine how we talk about economics, because economics is usually focused on issues of wealth and measured on issues of GDP. And they actually suggest that we need to be talking about economics of happiness and the economics of what it means for our community to have health, right? How can we measure our health, and how can we measure our sense of community strength instead of just the money that is moving through? And so when we're talking like in Santa Fe, right here, I'll show a little map that shows about of the between 2009 and 2013 or 2000 and 2013, there was a shift of population here. And we actually see that the biggest shifts in population, which are green right here, are the biggest places where Latinos moved away from, right? They moved away from these areas and moved into these other areas that are kind of around. And I'll read right here. This is actually a quote from that from the what's it called, the study that was published about Santa Fe, where it says that by the 1980s, suburban development furthered the creation of new subdivisions throughout Santa Fe. With growing population, rising middle-class incomes driven by government and tourism, and a growing retirement and second home markets spurred by arts and culture, a new market for upscale housing took hold. There was a proliferation of housing along the ridgetops outside the city boundaries. Within the city, old neighborhoods were brought up and houses were remodeled. Lower income residents continued to move away from downtown or were forced into apartment complexes developed along the south of the city. One example of this came from a lifetime Santa Fe resident who said, "My cousin's family lived on West Alto Street for generations. Then their house was condemned by the city, bought out, and now it's a casita and B&B. They all now live on the south side." So this is actually the experience of someone who had lived there for generations, whose house was condemned and made worthless essentially by city standards, and they bought it out for a fraction of the price that it is now worth. And the people who own that are usually, and this is very common in Santa Fe, that they are not actual residents of the city. They're often people who come in and visit their vacation houses. There's various famous people who own property there. And so here's another map that actually shows what the population actually looks like right now. You see that amidst what's it called, the lowest percentage of here population is actually of the Latino population lies along these little areas right here.
Mhm.
Let me see if I'm reading this right. And over here, sorry, we have a map that shows the income disparities, and they actually do quite map up according to where people are living. You know, like there's like a visual correspondence here to the sections that are receiving high levels of income and are also living on specific properties of land. And so we see here that, and there's also very common in Albuquerque, that the landscape is segregated by wealth. There's actually a lot of neighborhoods that are very wealthy that are split by a district line, and then you go across the street and you're actually in a very poor, underfunded neighborhood. And that's not very uncommon in various places in New Mexico. I feel like I've actually bumped into that here in town myself, where one side of town is much more developed, and suddenly you're driving by a place that has a lot of abandoned buildings and et cetera. And so here they talk about the indicators of displacement, and some of the important things to watch out for is the vulnerability of housing, the vulnerability that our citizens have in terms of housing. And and here in Las Cruces, I think a lot of people are very vulnerable. A lot of people live paycheck to paycheck and actually live in a situation that they could very easily lose their house if they were to suddenly lose their income. I know I live in that situation. And after reading the economic development book by Todaro and Smith, I realized that I'm actually living in a state of total poverty according to their markings. And so I realized that even then I'm one of the more privileged and more I guess like well-to-do people in town. Like I don't see myself necessarily, I know there's people struggling in this town more than I am. And to think that I'm already under their indexes living at such a state of poverty. And I notice it, you know, like I have to go to work, and I love to do the research for this committee, but even I'm struggling to get through this research because for one, I have to go to work. I'm not getting paid for this. And this is essentially a lot of passion just coming out of a lot of the passion that I have. And so I feel like not everyone in town has the privilege of like sacrificing what I get to sacrifice for this, you know? And so when we're talking about who is receiving the benefits of art and who is actually going to participate in art, we're actually talking about like, what does it take to participate with art? Like for me, it takes a lot, and it takes all this extra work that I had to get a degree for, and all these other things that brought me here, that allow me to even understand the bureaucratic processes that I'm barely learning, right? That I'm still struggling to learn here with all of you guys. And so these are actually, I think, concerns that we need to pass on when asking questions about who we're working for in the city and what does it mean for the art board to do these surveys, to talk to the community, and what are our actual goals, right? Like how do we plan to actually improve? Like what specific things are we doing to improve the city? Here's some rankings about our economy here that I like to share with you guys too. So like here goes to show that we're actually in a special situation where we're not economically like, it's not horrifying, I guess, you know, like our household income has been going up, but not too much yet. But our like the amount of income that people are actually like getting in as a whole and the entire city is staying quite the same. But we're also seeing that since COVID started, we have lost a lot of jobs. There's actually a drop off right here of payroll employment that's really big that started in April of 2020. And we see that also reflected right here in the numbers of people who applied for SNAPs. And these are all things that I found in our budget. And I wish I had the skills to break everything down in that budget a bit better. But these are just sort of the things that stood out to me that was telling me that not just are we in a unique economy where we're not sinking like many other places are, but we're also in an economy that's not doing too well. We're not, as a whole, we're not, I think most of our industries that we see here are actually NMSU. We have a lot of city employment, and aside from that, most people are just working, right? They're not, how can I say this? Sorry, I don't have the best language to talk about economics sometimes, but let me see, how can I clarify? Man, okay, sorry about that. Got a little blip in my thinking here, but yeah, so I think like thinking about the kind of markets that actually run less cruises is important, because I think we also think like it's mostly going to be the missile base, our city government and NMSU. And so that actually shows that our local economy itself isn't active. I wish I had shown the statistics for the businesses that are being built, because that's also on our budget, like the number of businesses that have been built over the last couple of years. And there's there's like a steady number of businesses applying for licenses and stuff. But there's not really a steady, it doesn't seem like there's a steady growth of actual local businesses that are staying. And so I'm going to talk a little bit. I don't know if you guys know Andrew Yang. He was running for president this last, and I found him surprisingly inspiring, the way that he sort of created this sort of grassroots campaign that was centered all around the humanizing of capitalism. And for him, he says that our social institutions are not evolving fast enough with our economy and with the technology that runs our economy. And so for him, one of the main concerns is that as our economy is changing, a lot of the old habits of work and of what runs an economy are actually phasing out. And we're actually sort of not evolving fast enough to the way that technology is getting rid of cashiers. And in his book, The War on Normal People, he actually even goes to say that in the next 20 years, we won't have managerial positions very much anymore. He's actually showing that there's already places like Walmart who actually got rid of assistant managerial positions, and those things are done now through computers, the job that the assistant manager used to do. So we actually see a great risk of economic displacement in cities like ours, because a lot of our people here in the city actually work that are not involved with NMSU or with the city are often working as truck drivers, or they actually do these kinds of what are menial jobs, essentially low wage jobs a lot of the time. And so what Andrew Yang also finds is that when people leave the job market, especially when you're over 40, the chances of you going back into the job market afterwards are very low. It is very hard for you to either get retrained or get re-educated, because at that age, like I think it's like life is much more complicated, is really what it is. He shows that education for people who have been essentially working at a certain job their whole life is actually a very difficult switch. And there's various studies that show why that's actually like not necessarily the best plan, to retrain all of these people who are losing their jobs into whatever the new economy is. They might not be interested in becoming computer scientists, for example, because that's like the idea is that we turn truck drivers into computer scientists once the truck drivers are phased out by computers. But that's kind of ridiculous. And so he's actually the one who proposed the freedom dividend, which is now where we're getting our stimulus checks, right? Like that was the model for the stimulus check, which he says that people should be essentially receiving money from the government. But I think like his main point is ultimately that we need to be securing our citizens' economy. We need to be focusing on making sure that our citizens all around are sort of economically secure, and that they feel like that they can be active members in their community, not necessarily, because I think like what he shows is that there's a very strong problem with people who work all the time, who are on a what they call a scarcity mentality. And I think a lot of people in Las Cruces live on that scarcity mentality and don't have time to think about things like art. They don't have time to think about these things we call leisure, right? Pleasures, higher thinking, apparently. So when we're talking about Las Cruces growing, which is actually part of the master plan, this is the reasons we built the art board in the first place, right? It was because Las Cruces is growing. We're seeing an increasing interest in investing on our arts and in our artists. So we have to really ask ourselves, who has access to the development that we're actually trying to bring into the city, and how can the art board essentially work in terms of those questions about development? Here are some good questions that came up to me when I was working is, what do we mean by increased community engagement? What do we mean by making art a way of life? And that's one of the ones that I think is actually very vague in our goals. I'm not entirely sure how we make art a way of life, because, well, there's very reasons. Well, hopefully I can get into that, but I realize I have a lot to say already. Who sees the benefits of our raising arts capital? What do we mean by beautify, and in what ways are those things real improvements in people's lives? Something that Rosalind Deutsch actually goes into in her book is that often beautifying our city means making it hostile to homeless people, or to people loitering, or whatever that means, or even to indigenous people having rituals in public spaces. So that's actually been a big aspect of how we develop public spaces, is to actually push out certain types of activities and sort of control what we think is appropriate in a city and what we don't think is appropriate in the city. And beautifying the city has often been used as a language for pushing that kind of aggressive city design. And so we should be asking ourselves as, who benefits from public art and how do they benefit from it? And also, what other civic improvements and responsibilities are implied in the management of a city public art collection? Because I think that's actually a really big question. I think when we manage our city art collection, we're also building a narrative as to what the city is, what's happened in the city, and we really need to consider how we go about those messages. Here's a little bit more about economic development, about a couple of more notes. You guys can come back to them later if you guys need to, but it is just sort of going back into the importance of integrating economic development with other aspects of our civic processes. defining our communities. So he's actually a Santa Fe artist that I really like. His name is Luis Tapia. Wanted to show one of his works. I think his artwork is always a beautiful representation of New Mexican communities. And I think if you guys saw the presentation by Norma, you know, in the Las Cruces Museum, she also talks a lot about how there's a lot of artwork in town that would often get put up and then it gets taken down for being controversial. And how there's actually a history that is actually kind of problematic about how we make those choices and how certain stories get left up in town while certain other stories get taken down. And so I repeated the questions there for some reason, but there they are again. When we're talking about who sees the benefits of our arts community. So when talking about art as a civic responsibility, which us in the art board, that's essentially what we're saying, that public art, that there's a relationship between art and our civic government. And so here's a little discussion about like some categories of historical categories of art, which is classical art, modern art, and postmodern art, which are you know, in school, we were taught about like how the classical art was and I say it actually on this side over here, that the classical arts were a sort of aristocratic representation of social structures of the time, right? And so like if they really represented what society valued then, which was often class and aristocracy. In the modern days, when we start seeing the devolution of those sort of values, we see a more democratic sort of approach to art that is categorical. That's all about the medium. That's all about the skill of the individual artist. And so it tries to sort of remove the old imposed classes of art and says art must justify itself. But the postmodern people, which came right around the 60s and 70s, we see that it sort of takes a lot of modernity's assumptions about democracy and its categories and sort of flips them on its head and sort of tells us that they're not they're not what we necessarily assumed, and they actually emphasize the thin line between all of modernity's categories. And postmodernity was actually one of its biggest moves was the reintegration of art and life. And so we actually see since the 60s, actually a large growing number of public art happening, art events, art installations, or art performances, right? Through these various sort of like new theories of art that were what they called rhetorical and political art. And so one thing we see develop in that time over that period of time is the artist citizen. There's actually a really good essay, and I'll try to share this with you guys at some point. I'll try to share you guys a lot of the research I did. I'll try to like compile it in a folder and send it over. But there's actually a really great book that I think we should all reference when talking about public art. It's called the artist, or it's called Future Publics, the Rest Can and Should Be Done by the People. It's a critical reader that was published in 2015 by various global artists who are actually very concerned with the way that civics and art are sort of entangling and sort of evolving in the sort of political field out there now. And so she talks a lot about empowerment and something that, and devolution. And I actually want to focus on those sort of terms because that is essentially what we're trying to do for our community. At a certain level, we're trying to empower our community through giving them a civic voice. I think we as the art board, or we as people who are giving advice on public art, that is what we are concerned with, the empowerment of the community. And so when she talks about devolution, she actually talked about the process of disempowering oneself. A lot of the times, and here it is in the quote, I'll read it. It's so much clearer when she says it. This empowerment implies that the artist citizen can help those lacking economic, cultural, or political opportunities and entitlements without giving up any of her own privileges. This gesture betrays a residual paternalism with its emphasis on the munificence of the donor and produces no genuine transformation in what remains an asymmetry of cultural, social, and political capital. So devolution, on the other hand, implicates that the artist citizen substantially and viscerally in the act of giving, it implies that as a precondition to the development of more equitable social relationship, she will give up some of her privileges and claims to expertise that reside with her under an inequitable system, and transfer these to colleagues who lack them. So we're actually talking about redistribution of power when we're talking about public art. A lot of the times we're actually talking about how we can, we ourselves who are here talking and discussing the future of our city, we have power, but we also have to not get carried away and think we can speak for those communities directly. Because I think that's often what happens in city councils and in art boards like this, is that we sort of get caught up with our own ability to make choices, and we start making choices for people when we don't necessarily have the right. And so some questions that I also brought up about this is like, what are the roles that we want our artists to actually be playing in our community? What do we expect from our artists, and what do we want our artists to be expecting from us as the city? And as well as how can we make these relationships more reciprocal and equitable overall? I'm gonna talk a little bit about cowboy art real quick. I read this wonderful essay published by J. Gary Sweeney, who was invited to write this essay for a what's it called, an exhibition at UNM about the Oklahoma City Museum of Cowboy Art, of National Cowboy Hall of Fame. And he published this essay that essentially criticized, right, the way that cowboy art has been used to perpetuate sort of manifest destiny ideologies and the sort of conquest of the West. And so Sweeney reveals that there's real political motivations in these sort of like cowboy art aesthetics that are kind of concerned with perpetuating a particular history about how the West was founded and what the West actually is about. And so after he published that essay for the museum actually threatened to pull the gallery because they thought his essay was unpatriotic. And so he ended up publishing it with the Oxford Publication of Art. And so he ended up actually publishing a more in-depth critique there. But I think there's an important thing to note about cowboy art, because that's actually the majority of the art that we in Las Cruces show, and it's actually what is often looked at when people think of Las Cruces art, which is actually problematic because that just falls into the sort of colonized narrative and really tells us about how we think this city was founded. So there's actually here cowboy art in our own collection, various artworks by Anthony Pennock, who is an artist who was born here in Las Cruces, but he is an artist who romanticized the depictions of this landscape as a settlerist and emphasizes the colonization of this landscape by the Spanish. A lot of his artwork is actually about Oñate, who committed genocide against various indigenous people. So we have a lot of artwork, including La Entrada, who actually glorify his entrance here, right? That's what La Entrada means, the entrance of Oñate into the Southwest. And it actually has specific depictions of the Manso people making a snake dance, which is actually an incorrect representation. The Manso people never did a snake dance. And also they never dressed like that. It was actually brought to the attention of Pennock by one of our own community, one of our members from the Tortugas community, Ed Roybal, and he brought it up to Pennock's attention, but Pennock responded saying that he knew his history. And so that's actually, I think, a problematic, very problematic issue to be having our art represented this way, and for us to be actively telling our own citizens that we know their history better. It actually especially because Anthony Pennock, even though he was born in Las Cruces, his mother was not. His mother and his father came here because his father worked at White Sands Missile Range, and they came here from, I can't remember where, I think it was somewhere in the East. And his mother, who was also an artist, Carolyn Bunch, also depicts similar images of indigenous people and glorifications of the Spanish colonization. Now, I don't want to, like, I think this is a personal issue because our actual public art that we own by the city is majority and Anthony Pennock. And I think that although these narratives, it's not to say that they don't have any place in our community for us to be talking about these colonizations. I think the way that we're talking about them, the way we're glorifying them, and the way that we are essentially not letting, because we don't actually have any public art by any indigenous people in our community. Meanwhile, we're actually telling the stories of our indigenous people through people who are non-indigenous, by actual settlers who came in during the 50s, which is actually another prominent part of how our history is told, right? The economic incentives that built the city are always caught up with the Spanish and then with the military coming here. And we also need to address that when the military came here, when we installed Fort Bliss in El Paso, it was because we installed that to actually kill Native Americans specifically. They were actually set up where we brought the Buffalo Soldiers, and we brought them here to fight off the Navajo and various other what they call indigenous people that were all living here, so that we could settle. And yeah, so I think it's actually bad because there's very anthropologic case about it, because it's not actually being told by the community itself, a lot of these stories. And it's really hard to be proud of a history, right, that is sort of centered around this violence, and that glorifies this violence and treats the indigenous people as if they're not here. It's actually kind of sad that it's not common practice for people here in Las Cruces to do land acknowledgements, which are very important things in most places in the world where people acknowledge the still active indigenous nations in whatever landscape they're in. When we're talking about reassessing our collection, I also need to bring up Sebastian Vela, who is...
So, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to be respectful of people's times. It's 12 o'clock, it's okay, but I do think since we started a little bit late, are you guys okay spending another 15 minutes?
Almost done.
Okay. I would love to see.
I have to head out.
Okay, thanks, Chantel.
It was a great presentation, so it's beautiful though. It's a voice we need to hear, and amazing history behind it. And as an indigenous person, it helps a lot with that that narrative of being erased, being invisible, and having some of the awful imagery be present here, a lot of it. So thank you, this was amazing.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Yeah, sorry for being so long. I kind of got carried away. It's kind of forget how much there was to it, but
yeah, that's okay. I'd like for you to continue, and then if we could spend maybe about 10 minutes on discussion, because I think a lot of this is very important. So we'll give you a couple more minutes to continue your presentation.
This coming up to the end.
Okay, great.
Cool. But I did want to bring up this other artist, Sebastian Vela, who recently actually has been caught up in some controversy in the city because of some allegations of domestic and sexual abuse. We actually own one of his murals, which is the Rio Grande Theater one. And Sebastian Vela himself has a tendency of depicting images of indigenous women on his walls, a lot of which have been some of the women to come forward to him about removing their images because not just because of his history, because of history specifically with those women. So it's actually really problematic that we support that it's actually a very prominent muralist in our community, and it's problematic that we are continuously supporting him, even though these allegations have actually been around for over 2 years now. And he still gets work in the city. He still gets very positive publicity in our newspapers. And I think we really need to ask ourselves that when we're asking about like who is public art for, we have to ask ourselves like who is being represented, and what does the community actually feel when they see these artworks, right? Because a lot of these women actually feel a lot of pain when they see his artwork up around town, and recently one of them was defaced. One of them was actually defaced because of that. And yeah, I think there needs to be some addressing about how we're going to assess our collection, especially considering all the different problematic different artworks that are actually in our collection, including some of the Pennock ones. So I've been thinking a lot about our responsibilities in the art board. And I underlined here that we are here to, that I think at least this is one that stood out to me, that we are identifying and prioritizing project opportunities to managing artist selection processes and individual projects to carry out ongoing care and maintenance of our growing collection. I think that is one of our main responsibilities, along with staying relevant and responsive to the community's needs. We as art board members are made up of technically private citizens. We're not being paid by the city, so we're not necessarily like, I guess there's a different category, and I'd like to really get a better understanding of that, because I think this has a lot to do with the vagueness of the art board, right? Because we are sort of caught up in the middle of being both like civically responsible to the city by law, by ordinance, but also privately responsible as artists who are here to give our advice and who are here to give our opinion on matters of what they call choices, of the choices that we're making. And so here are some questions that I think we should keep in mind while moving forward. Is how is the input that we have received in previous surveys being used? In the master plan, there's not very clear reference to the surveys, and I really like to understand how they were actually referenced when building up the plan. And I think we need to document that kind of work. What are our goals for the community's engagement with our art city? I think we need to clarify what those things are, and also addressing the ways that are that with the institutional equity actually keep people from having access to art and to making choices in art. And we should sort of ask ourselves what meaningful changes can be made so that people have better access to us. Some recommendations that I put here is that we expand our collections through proper consultations with local leaders. I think consultation is a very important part of how we go through assessing what work we actually own and how we talk about that artwork and how we continue to display that artwork. We should define more clearly what the goals and functions of the public art and the important presence in the community. We need to invest in cultural centers. We need to really consider how those sort of things are involved in in sort of our processes, how like sort of we or cross into that. We need to think more about holding public panels and more proper outreach with the communities and its members, sort of more places for people to voice their opinions more frequently, in more meaningful ways, as well as to correct our local histories and representations of the landscape. I think that's also a very important sort of job of the public art, because public art, that's essentially what it's going to do. It's going to represent our histories as well as represent our goals for the future, what we actually want to do. So we'd like to, and for me, I think decolonizing our records would be something to talk about. There's already been in contact with Meg Gehring from NMSU. She's the art history professor there, and she's already working on a project with her students in which they're going to decolonize the surveying of the murals on NMSU campus. So that might even be something we'd like to stay in touch with her on. And here's my bibliography for you guys need to reference anything. And here's some further readings on some great people who talk about a lot of wonderful interconnectedness between arts, civics, politics, as well as, and economics, because I think those are all important things we should be referencing. And that's it.
Excellent presentation. Yes, thank you so much. So we'll spend a couple of minutes on discussion. Does anybody have any thoughts on Saul's presentation?
Chair.
Thank you so much.
Counselor Flores?
Yes, I have a lot of comments about that, but I will narrow them down. First of all, thank you so much for this comprehensive. I don't know how long it took you to do it, but it's amazing how focused you were. And if I were your professor, I'd give you an A. Just on this, you'd get an A for the whole semester and all the other classes take that I teach, because you synchronized and you brought it all together. And I sit on the Economic Development Committee. I sit on the Policy Review Committee, as well as Housing. And everything you touched on is economically based, and it's not necessarily for the people. It's for profit in many cases. And I'm not saying our departments work that way. I'm saying that the way the system is. And I know that one of the things that we did with we have a big cheese company here. It's based in Montreal. It's Saputo Cheese. Saputo Cheese. And they're out in the West Industrial Mesa, near where the airport is. And they want to expand. And so we had to vote on that and approve it. And the questions that I had for them was, they have all these 150 positions, and the pay range is like anywhere from, I don't know, $15, whatever, to 120,000. So my question was, I had a lot of questions, but one of them was, how many of those employees are at the higher end of the spectrum? And is there going to be on the job training to go up, go up the ladder, whatever ladder, the ladder of success there? And how are they going to get there? Do you have transportation? There's only one road and one highway that gets you to the airport. So those were, and there were a lot of other questions. And a judge, a district judge called me. He happened to be watching our city council meeting, and he thanked me for the questions I asked. And I made it clear to our city manager that we were not going to be, yes, we want economic development, but we don't want it on the backs of people. And the other with about housing, it's the housing PRC is comprised of people from all sectors in our community. And when I brought up the concept of the city buying land in the East Mesa from the state, because we have a lot of, and that's my district, there's a lot of trust lands out there, and there's BLM land. And as far as BLM land, so long as it's used for the good of the people, they could sell it or lease it or whatever to the city. And the other is the state land. The commissioner for the Stephanie Garcia Richard, she wants to. Her directive is to generate money for the schools. All money goes to our schools, so it's a win-win. The city leases or buys land from the state. Well, first, it's a two-step process. So you first lease and then you buy. But the point, though, is that then the city would build affordable housing. And I brought up the concept of dignity, owning a home and having that dignity, that you don't have to worry about a landlord kicking you out. And I brought up the simple, example of a lot of us who've had roommates, when we were in college. And then, you get into a spat and you find yourself sleeping on a friend's couch because you don't have a place to live anymore. And I think a lot of us have been in those situations. But it was such a protected environment where a professor took me, and she was, just lovely because I was crying. I was a reader for her. And so she took me in my last semester in college. And, but, I brought the issue of dignity. People didn't understand it. I mean, it's like, what? And I thought, well, I'm sitting here among very comfortable people. I mean, economically or financially comfortable people. And So everything you brought up, Saul, is just, you know, it brings me to tears. Everything, the art, the economics, you know, the history. And I feel very much being Mexican that, you know, I tell people, yeah, I have a French name, Yvonne, and a Spanish surname, Flores, but I'm neither. I'm Mexican. And I had a professor in law school who insisted on calling me Ms. Flore, because his mother was French and her name was Yvonne, and therefore my name was pronounced Flore. So it was insult upon insult. Yeah. So, and I too feel very strongly, Saul, I think we all do, that our history has just been so misrepresented, and the cowboy thing. And I fought really hard against, with all due respect to the Doña Ana Historical Society, they wanted to change Motel Boulevard to Pat Garrett Boulevard. And I got a lot of flack. You know, it was like water off my back, no skin off my nose type of thing. I said, why don't you just name it the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo? You want people to get off the freeway? And it was going to cost $1 million to change the signs and get, you know, the feds involved, because it's, you know, I-10 and I-10. And I said, just change it. And then you want people to get off? Then people will get off. And they'll want to know why, what is this Tratado de Guadalupe Hidalgo? What's that all about? Well, anyway, he's already written twice to just most recently too, this was several years ago. And then he asked to be on KTEL, our radio community. So Peter Goodman, you know, who's a dear friend, called and said, Yvonne, he's going to be blasting you. So do you want to come on? And it was New Year's Eve. And I said, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow morning on January 1. So there I was. And then I blasted him again. And he said that he found it very offensive because his wife is white and his kids are half white. And how do you think they felt? And I said, well, my kids are half white too. And they see themselves as Mexican because I'm their mother. And they were very proud of me. And I'm very proud of myself. And I'll, you know, so anyway, I just got in his face right there on the radio. The point though is that this is something though, Saul, that I would really like to bring to the city. I think your presentation, and I have to go through through all the ropes. I wish that we still had, I hope COVID is open really soon, but I will definitely talk to the mayor and the city manager about giving you time for this presentation. It might have to be condensed. I don't know, but we want it to be out there because, and I've shared this before, you know, to the public, that my son, my younger son is an artist. My older son is a political analyst, and they have a lot in common because they talk about, you know, everything to everything. So it's really interesting. And my younger son went through a really bad time in high school. Because he was gay, or he is still alive, thank God. And he attempted suicide, came within 2 hours of dying. He was a senior in high school. And I've shared that story that if it hadn't been for art, you know, just having that world, looking at life through that prism, he might not be with me today or with us today. And so the importance of art, you know, it's just so very powerful. And I can't stress it enough. And I was very happy that Greg, well, I wasn't happy that Greg left. He's a dear friend, but I'm so happy that vacancy occurred. And I think he recommended to the mayor, or the mayor asked me, because he knows how much I appreciate and love art and everything. But so I'll do that, Saul. I think, and I'd like to, if you could contact me at yflores, what's my email address? Oh, yflores at
los-cruces.com.
Thank you. Thank you. Or
It's
my
actually
personal,
.org.
actually, it's .org.
Sorry.
Yes.
Organization. Or you can contact me at my personal email. It's Yvonne Vavoom, just the way it sounds, Yvonne, Y-V-O-N-N-E, V-A-V-O-O-M @AOL.com. I'd really like to sit and talk to you, Saul. and introduce you to, the city manager. And you probably already know the mayor, but not that he isn't important, but I think it's just really, really important. And then maybe Connie, I think he had to leave the meeting. But anyway, I can't thank you enough, Saul, and I just love this board. I think all of you are dynamite. I think Ceci is a big plus for us as well. Not that, the interims and the other people weren't, but I'm just saying that she's been with the city, and her husband is also an artist. He's an actor, actually. So everybody here, I think, really appreciates the arts. And so please contact me, Saul, if you feel comfortable. If not, you don't have to. I'd really, really like this presentation to be presented to the city. And because when we have our council meetings and our work sessions every Mondays, except the 5th Monday, it's a bye. All department heads sit in, and other people sit in on those meetings. So everybody becomes aware, because we really need that perspective. And it's just, I can't think of the word, but it just all, it was just like this Rubik's Cube that really, all these little pieces just, and it all, anyway. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Tina, and forgive me for going on and on, but this is dynamite. Thank you.
No, I'm thrilled that this is something that you want to present to other people and to some of the higher ups in the city, because people need to, be aware of a lot of the things that he presented. So
yes, well, people don't understand how powerful art is. I mean, the kind of art that art appreciation that you have to take to graduate with your BA or something, it focuses on, like the Venus de Milo or whatever, de Milo, however it's pronounced. And all, and then people like, well, never mind. I won't go into it. People think that that's what art is. So one semester in college. So thank you. Thank you, Tina, and thank you, everybody.
of course. Thank you, Councilor Flores. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to final board comments before we dismiss. So I'll go ahead and I think I'll start with Katrina.
All right, I suppose. I really appreciated your presentation, Sol. It also made me start thinking a lot about like our role. I mean, I know that the whole question was about like what our role in the city, our board is, but also just in general what the role of the art board is, and like the implication in that, and like our social responsibility, like in regards to like, do we as an art board comment on social issues happening in the community? Where do we take a stance? How do we take a stance? What form do we take in order to take that stance? Like, so it made me think a lot about things like that and what the city's role is in those things as well. Because it's not like you can know everything about an artist before you pick them, and sometimes things come out after the fact. But like also just being so knowledgeable about the what you're putting and where you're putting it, and the connotations behind it, and the history, and social, political, economic history behind everything that you're doing. So I appreciated that. I liked the questions that you asked. And
hopefully we can find some answers.
Huh?
Hopefully we can make some answers.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Art's goal is asking questions and not finding answers. That's so you did your job. Now somebody else finds the answers. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. We'll find the answers for sure. But yeah, so I really appreciate that. It was a really good presentation. I felt like I was back in our history class, and so thank you.
All right, Elisa.
Oh, I'm proud. No, I'm proud. I will push you out this door to make you do it again. Okay, I just wanted to give you, again, just from a stance of organization, when you do this, and again, feel free to reach out to me because this is my thing, because I know that Councilwoman Flores should say about reorganizing a little bit and containing it a little bit, and I think I can really help you on that. But in the meantime, I want you to look at the three-dimensional model. It's called a triple bottom line. And you didn't say it out loud, but you were saying it through your pieces. And what you're doing is you're going to have a composite of economics, community, and environment. And all three topics you did touch on explicitly. And so I'll leave that for down the road because I'm a big fan of economic development. I think that was in my interview with Susan and Christina below. And then also Yang, I'm totally familiar with him, the Yang Gang. A couple of my friends, Hannah Wong, are actually helping him out. So he's not 100% my niche, but I like it. He's actually going the direction of what they would refer to as universal income. So there's something that a few friends of mine and that are up there in the political wing, they've tried out in a few Midwestern states up north. So that's the direction that he's going with there. And then my only suggestion other than that would be for you to look up what Biden is doing right now, because there is something with housing and infrastructure where he's working with the new secretary. I think it's Pete, where they can actually begin to separate those lines of definition, where, as you said during your speech, on one side of the road, you've got $400,000 homes, and right on the other side of the highway, you got $15 an hour. So research, because those things that you're talking about are actively going right now, which is exactly why Councilwoman Flores was just, in my opinion, I'm not speaking for you, but my own interpretation is why this spoke to her so loudly, because it's present. And when you use when you use history as a process for decision making, which is 100% what you're doing right now, you always hit the mark, okay? So please, we talk, reach out to me. I'm gonna reach out to you anyway, because I'm gonna make sure that you nail this in front of the mayor and everyone else. You are nailing this. And that way you can do a great job and you can come back and tell us later how you did it, okay?
Lisa, I too was thinking that you could collaborate with Mr. Ramirez on
I
this.
want no credit for this whatsoever. I'm just
No,
gonna
just
back away.
that's what I mean. It's all his.
There you go.
So the word collaboration wasn't accurate, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to Susan.
I'm just sitting over here with my heart gushing. I'm over here drawing hearts on the paper and making little heart motions with my hands. I am so in love and excited about this whole group and this energy and the direction you all are wanting to go. When we started this art board, it sort of was an outgrowth from some work that the Art Council wasn't wanting to do. And we were very much being led in the direction of the classical bronzes that commemorate the historic characters. I just really love this new direction. I feel so energized by this, and I'm excited. Yay.
I'm also very energized. I have not stopped on, I've just been on this presentation, at least for this whole month, nonstop on it.
It's important. You did good work.
Thank you, Susan. All right, we'll move on to Ceci.
Wow. I'm still processing so much of that information, but thank you for teaching me today. Thank you for educating me. I really did learn a few things today. And I just, I feel like I'm the boots on the ground here, and I'm just ready to move your passion and the things that you want to do, the whole board wants to do forward. So thank you. And I do want to thank, we did have some attendees at this meeting. I don't know if you all could see them, but I want to thank them for attending and for listening. I don't know that they can raise their hands if they want to comment, but they can. And I know that Greg Smith was listening as well. I don't know if he's still on there, but if you think it's appropriate, I can unmute him to see if he wants to say anything. Tina?
Sure. Yes.
Greg, are you there? Greg? you may be muted or not able to do that. So,
Maybe he stepped away from his computer for
yeah.
something. Okay.
Okay, well, we tried.
All right.
Thank you.
Was there anything else, Ceci?
Nope, that's it for now.
Okay. So we'll move on to Saul.
Yes, so thank you guys for your comments. I know there's so much to talk about. I think there's really appreciate you guys this time, and I'm sorry for going a little overboard. Even I think I need to go to the dentist pretty soon, so I got to go do that. But yeah, it was wonderful talking to you guys, and I really enjoyed presenting my research. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you. My final comments are in regards to Saul's presentation. I really enjoyed, the information that you had about gentrification and also artist citizens, and of course the cowboy art. I think that's something that we've all kind of been aware of within this art community, that it's good to kind of put a highlight on that. In regards to some of the other artists, you brought up the Vela issue, which I commend you for bringing that up, because kind of going back into what Katrina was saying is, what is our role? I've been approached throughout this week about this topic, and I'm not exactly sure where my role as a chair of the art board versus me as an art advocate and an artist, what my role is. But I think that either way, the city needs to, at least in terms of art purchasing, and that's why we have committees, but to reach out to the artists in this community to maybe gain insight on things that they may not be aware of. There was another situation where I saw an artist being represented in I think it was the Rio Grande Theater, and that artist was kind of known for plagiarizing artwork. And of course, they had no idea that that was something that was even a thing.
Yeah.
So again, it's just kind of one of those things that I think that connection between the city and the art community, we can't do anything about private purchases and private murals, but in terms of the public artwork, I think that that's something that the city should be aware of.
Yeah, at least how we discuss our decisions as well. Yeah, what we have in our collection.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna just say really, really fast. There's something else I was gonna bring up. Oh, okay, and then Susan. So this is your last meeting with us.
Oh.
Maybe. Okay.
There we go. I can talk. I will sit in on the next meeting or two. In my mind, I'm yours until July. So
Okay.
you can count on me to be at meetings, go ahead and invite me to them, get me on the access list or whatever. I will be trying very hard to sit back and keep my mouth zippered up and listen more. I think it's time for me to start that.
Yay,
Okay.
books.
Then I'll save our farewells for later then.
And Susan, you can have one of these if you'd like.
Bless you.
Earned it. You've earned it.
Yeah, sorry, I do have to go. I'm about to be late to my dentist appointment, but I really appreciate you guys' time.
Okay.
Goodbye. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
too.
Contact me, so.
Greg Smith just popped in. We were doing our final comments. Was there anything that you wanted to add?
I just wanted to thank you all for including me, and unfortunately, because I was running another Zoom meeting for staff here, I couldn't get on Zoom on my computer. It would be nice if you could put them side by side, but I don't think Zoom allows you to do that. So I was trying to do it from my phone, and I was trying to enter, crosshatch sticks. Oh no, that's what I did wrong. I was entering crosshatch as opposed to star. Anyway, I apologize for not responding when you all asked me to speak up. But thank you. I appreciate what Saul had to present, and I certainly think that it's an important perspective that needs to be included in what we're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so our next meeting is going to be on April 13th at 2021, of course, the year 2021. So meeting April 13th at 10 a.m. Do I have anybody who would like to adjourn?
No, we want to stay here. We want to stay here forever.
Okay, Susan would like to adjourn, and who will second that?
I second that we move to adjourn.
Okay, so we'll move to adjourn. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you, Tina. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.